I intended to make this video about 3 months ago where it probably would have made sense me doing a all the books I've read so far in 2023 video. I just didn't get around to it. I've had such a busy summer working on my main channel. If you don't follow me on my main channel, I do true crime and history, like long form essay style content. And as you can imagine, that takes up a lot of my time, but I really want to dedicate more time to this channel as well because I love making these videos so much. It's such a wonderful creative outlet. I love talking about books, I love reading books, and I love our little community that we've got going on here. My throat just made a really weird sound. I'm not going to re-record that, so if you heard that, then again, this channel, we're more, what's the word? We're more friendly on this channel. It's not as serious, you know? Anyway, I've read 46 books so far this year. We're going to go on to Tier Maker, and we are going to tier rank all the books I've read so far. If you're new to this channel, hello, my name's Georgia. I am a queer woman, which means the majority of books I read are about queer women or just the queer community in general. So if that is not your vibe, then maybe this isn't the channel for you. I literally had a comment the other day saying, why do you talk about queer books so much? Like, why? Like, what's wrong with straight books? There's nothing wrong with them. I don't read them. I read queer books because that is my life experience and that is who I am. So if you have a problem with that, then my channel's probably not the one for you. I'm like burrowing my way into that little niche. But I also do read a lot of mystery thriller books as well. So maybe you're more into that. My 5 tiers in this tier maker are perfection, which obviously is quite self-explanatory. These books are the best books I have read so far this year. Then you've got Gold Star. They're good, I really enjoyed them, not quite the best, but I would recommend. You'll Do is You'll Do, like it was fine, I didn't hate it, didn't love it, like it was an okay book. Then we've got Meh, probably would recommend it, I read it. I generally do read all books all the way through to the end. I'm trying to get better with like DNFing books, but once I've started, I'm so stubborn, I've just got to finish it. So Meh is for the books I probably wouldn't have finished if I wasn't me. And then we've got the very special tier, Please God No, for the worst books I've read, the books I would not recommend to anyone. I did actually film a video, 2-3 months ago, where I spoke about all of my least favourite books of all time, like the books I hate the most in the world. So if you're interested in that, if you enjoy hatred, then you can go and watch that. Oh, and actually, speaking of, the first book on this list is I'm a Fan by Sheena Patel, and that is going in Please God No. This was literally on the women's fiction shortlist, long list, I think. Am I making that up? I'm sure it was on a long list for a very prestigious award, and I thought the premise of this sounded fascinating. It's basically about a woman who is obsessed with this. So she's obsessed with the man she's sleeping with, and then also the woman she's obsessed with. And the woman she's obsessed with is a social media influencer. So I thought it was going to be this really interesting look into the world of social media and influencers and how that's sort of perceived on the outside, which is interesting to me because obviously I'm like a small time influencer, even though I hesitate at using that word. I don't think I'm really an influencer, but that's what people, you say you do YouTube, people think you're an influencer, that's just how it goes. So I thought it was going to be really interesting. It wasn't. It was whiny, it was slow, there was nothing redeeming about the main character. I feel like the book had some really interesting points to make in terms of like misogyny and race and like the whole social media thing, but it didn't make any of those points because all the protagonist here does is moan and whine, and she is so unlikable. This was a real chore to get through, and the book's like only about 200 pages long. Then we have Hot Shot by Claire Lydon. I really enjoy Claire Lydon books. I want to read all of them because the 2 or 3 I've read, I've just really, really liked. And this is actually going to go into Gold Star. I read this in like 2 days. It's on Kindle Unlimited, and I finished it on the plane whilst I was going on holiday last week, and it is just so good. It's a sapphic romance between an American football star, like American soccer, but football to me. So she transfers over to the Women's Super League here in the UK, and she basically ends up falling for the performance coach of the team, and it's about their relationship. I thought it was really good. I really like both the main characters. I'm really into football now. Like, who would have thought it? I always hated football. I never understood it. And then last year I watched the Women's Euros and I am now obsessed. And I'm not just obsessed with most of the players because they're all lesbians, although that certainly helps. Like, I genuinely enjoy the game now, which is wild. I just don't like men. But turns out women do something. I love it. Anyway, Hot Shot, I thought it was fantastic. Again, it's not going to be like world-breaking literature, like it's not going to win any prizes, but it's a fun sapphic love story where the characters are fantastic. News from the Dead by Mary Hooper. I did enjoy this book. I feel like it's written for teenagers. It's written for like children, basically. So the sort of style of writing isn't the best. I'm going to put it in You'll Do. This is the true story of Anne Green, who is the girl who came back from the dead. She was hung for the crime of infanticide. So basically she gave birth to a stillborn baby. And that in this time, which I think is like the 1700s, was illegal. And it basically tells her true story. The best thing I got from this book is it made me look into the story of Anne Green. I then did a full video on it on my main channel, and her story was fascinating. The book itself I found was a bit tedious at points. You have like points of views from characters that you just don't really care about, but the overarching storyline was interesting, just the writing left a bit to be desired. Then we've got Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, We Should All Be Feminists, which is basically an essay about feminism. I think this came from 2014, so it is quite outdated now, I think. So again, I'm going to put it in You'll Do. I did actually also see something on TikTok the other day about Chimamanda being a big old TERF. I don't know. I haven't really looked into that anymore, so I'm sure people have opinions about that. I'm just going off this essay as it is. We Should All Be Feminists is fine. It is fine. And I think when it was written in like 2014, it would have been quite sort of groundbreaking. But now, 10 years on, 2023, it's sort of all like very basic feminist talking points. But I do think if you've got somebody in your life who doesn't really understand feminism, has like no idea of like the basis on which it stands, I probably would recommend this as quite a good read. Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney is going to go into Meh. I can't even really remember what this book is about. I just remember really being very underwhelmed by it. I think it's about a woman in a coma. Yes, it's about a woman in a coma. So it opens up, first chapter, she's in a coma. And then you as the reader are sort of like going back in time as people try and figure out the sort of things that led up to her being in this coma. It wasn't even fine. It was just meh. Like that. It was just meh. Like, it's not a particularly good thriller, I don't think. Into the Water by Paula Hawkins sits somewhere between Meh and Please God No, but I don't think it was as bad as the books I'm going to put into Please God No, so I'm going to put it into Meh just because it's not as bad. I wasn't really a fan of Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins either. I thought it was alright. Again, not amazing, but I was intrigued to read this book. I'd heard very mixed reviews of Into the Water and I did not enjoy it. Not at all. It's about like witches. It's about a town in which women keep dying in the water and there's witches. And I thought that does sound kind of interesting. Like, obviously, big history nerd over here. The like witch trials are like a massive fascination point for me. Didn't do it for me, not at all. Then we have Lies, and I'm pretty sure this is by T.M. Logan, but I actually can't see in the thumbnail, so I'm just going to double check that real quick, because I do not want to say the wrong author. Come on. Yes, Lies by T.M. Logan. I'm actually really trying to work my way through T.M. Logan's books, because I read The Holiday by T.M. Logan about 3 years ago, and I loved that book so much, and so I'm reading loads more of his stuff, and nothing else has quite lived up to The Holiday. Lies is very much a You'll Do kind of situation. It's about a woman who finds herself in a situation where all these lies are like piled up on top of one another, and then her husband finds out that something's going on and he's like trying to uncover what's happening. I can't remember how this ends, to be honest. Maybe I'll go Meh. I'll stick it in Meh. Why not? I'm feeling mean. Then we have also 29 Seconds by T.M. Logan as well, which I'm going to put in You'll Do. I like this one a lot more than I liked Lies. It's about a woman who... she's in a job where her boss is like super misogynistic. He's like this famous like TV presenter, like history professor guy. and he basically forces women in the office to sleep with him in exchange for promotions, and she's put in this situation where she needs to sleep with him to get a promotion. And then she suddenly finds herself in a situation where she saves a little girl's life. The little girl just happens to be the daughter of like this Russian gangster, and the Russian gangster's like, I'll give you an opportunity for us to like kill one person in your life. And she's like, oh, I don't know. And then obviously she ends up telling them to kill this like creepy professor, and then stuff happens. Watching You by Lisa Jewell is going to go into You'll Do. This is a really interesting look actually at perspectives. The storyline I didn't think was anything to write home about, but the way that she sort of twists the perspectives between the characters in each chapter is so interesting. So it's one of these books where like each chapter is a different character, and you're sort of like switching back and forth between their like points of view, and you'll be like reading and you'll really hate one character and you'll be like, oh, they're definitely creepy, like they're definitely the villain, and then it will switch to their perspective and you'll like get the understanding of why they were doing what they were doing. And it was so cleverly written. I would recommend reading it just for that, because I thought it was genius. But the storyline itself I thought was a bit like meh, but that was so clever. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by, I think it's Holly Black, is going to go into Gold Star. Everyone loves this book. It is a YA mystery, like murder mystery basically, where you've got a teenager who's trying to like do this school project, and she decides to have a look at an old murder that happened in her town because she thinks that the person who's accused of the murder isn't actually one who did it. And so she goes on this like adventure to find out who really did it, and it's basically told, it's kind of like an epistolary kind of thing, but instead of through letters, it's like emails and old police reports and stuff. Is really cleverly written. They're actually making this into a TV show that I'm really interested to watch. Invisible Women by Caroline Criado Perez. I listened to this right at the beginning of the year, and it is going into perfection. Not because I think the writing is particularly incredible. It's a non-fiction book about data biases in a gendered world, about how women are basically always on the back foot because of the patriarchy, because of how the world is inherently planned around men and not women. The reason this is going in perfection is because I reference this book in conversation at least once a day. Everyone in my life hates me because of this book, because I talk about it all the time. I talk about the data in this book, the facts that I learned constantly, and it sent me down a rabbit hole of wanting to read so much non-fiction feminist stuff, literature, books. So interesting. This is like the blueprint. Find Me by Andrea Asman. Okay, if any of you have watched any of my other videos, you know where this is going. This is going, and please God no, this is the sequel to Call Me By Your Name by Andrea Asman, which is about Elio and Oliver. It is one of the most beautiful love stories. I love Call Me By Your Name so much, so when I heard he was doing a sequel, I was excited. Shouldn't have been excited. He ruined everything. If you like Call Me By Your Name, do not read this book. Again, I speak about this in my video where I basically just slander all the books that I hate the most in the world, and I go off about that book. It's awful. Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo is going to go into You'll Do. And I know this might be controversial. I know people really love this book, but hear me out. I have my reasons, and I think they're good reasons. So in Girl, Woman, Other, you basically are following the story of 12 different women. So you've basically got 12 chapters in which you find out about the lives of all these different women. I actually think there's one non-binary person in there, if I remember correctly. They're mostly black women. There's a couple of white women. And in like a small chunk of the book, you are learning about their entire life story. And then at the end, all these characters sort of like come together. It's really clever how Bernardine Evaristo ties all these different characters together. But some of the chapters I really struggle with. Some of the women I just didn't really care about. I didn't think their stories were all that interesting. Other ones I thought were so interesting. And just as you're like really getting into like the meat of the story, it ends. And then all of a sudden you're learning about a different character instead that you just don't really care about. And I feel like if maybe Evaristo had focused on the stories of 6 women and had gone much more in depth with these 6, rather than do like half stories about 12, I think I really would have enjoyed it. Like, I think it had the opportunity to be a 5-star book, but it just really started to frustrate me, especially like halfway through the book, where you sort of learn to love these characters and then it's done, it's over, and you've moved on, and it really annoyed me. In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead is also going into You'll Do, a murder mystery, like mystery thriller book about a group of adults who come together at their 10-year sort of college reunion, and they're basically trying to solve a murder that happened 10 years beforehand. One of their friendship group was brutally murdered, and they all sort of thought they knew who did it. They all blamed this one person, only it's become clear that maybe that person isn't the one who did it. So who did? It's really good. Again, it's not the best book you're ever going to read, but if you want like a gripping mystery thriller, I do recommend that. Especially this time of year, actually. It's really got that sort of like dark academia autumnal vibe. She Drives Me Crazy by Kelly Quinlan. This is a YA sapphic romance that's going to go into You'll Do. It's between a basketball star and a cheerleader. It's got all the tropes. It's got the whole like enemies to lovers, false proximity kind of situation. It's really cute. The Falling in Love montage by Kira Smith is another YA sapphic romance that's going to go into You'll Do. Again, You'll Do is not bad. Like, You'll Do is a good category. Like, these books are good. They're just not amazing. Falling in Love montage is really cute. It's set in Ireland. The main characters are both like quite lovable. The only reason I'm not putting this higher is because I actually think that Kira Smith's other book, Not My Problem, is so much better. And Not My Problem is not on this list because I actually read that one last year. But everyone raves about the Falling in Love montage. Not My Problem is the better one. Like, hold me to that. I truly believe it is. The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas is going straight into Mare. I read this as part of my lesbian read straight romance books video, and I don't understand it. I don't get it. People talk about this book all the time. I just did not get the romance in this book. I didn't feel it. There was no chemistry whatsoever between the characters. It's one of those situations where instead of like actually writing the chemistry, the author just tells you that the chemistry's there. Do you get what I mean? Like, you don't see it. The author's just like, yeah, they've got loads of chemistry. Just believe me, guys. Believe me, they've got chemistry. Did not get it at all. At all. On that note, I am actually doing another lesbian read straight romance video against my better judgment, but the last one did really well, so I want to do another one. The only book I've got so far on my list is Icebreaker because my best friend has lent it to me, so if you've got any recommendations of straight girl books that this lesbian is going to absolutely hate, or maybe enjoy, then let me know. The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. This is perfection. I listened to this in audiobook form, but I'm sure it's also just as beautiful to read. This is poetry. The entire book is just a big old long poem. It's about, what's the character's name? Michael, I'm sure it's Michael. And the main character is a boy called Michael, and it follows him from literally like childhood, like when he's a toddler or like 4 or 5 years old, all the way through to him being at university. And you basically uncover his identity with him as he does. It is so beautifully written, especially listening to it in like audiobook form. Just hearing like the spoken word poetry going straight into your brain is so beautiful. I love this so much. I rarely see people talking about it, but it's wonderful. And Michael obviously is a queer man. He's queer and he's sort of like uncovering his queerness, and then he becomes a drag queen at university. He goes to Brighton University, which I just love any book that is set in Brighton because it is one of my favourite places in the entire world. It's just beautifully written. And speaking of Brighton, the next one is actually Afterlove by Tanya Byrne, which is also set in Brighton. This is another YA sapphic romance, but it's got a twist because one of the characters is actually dead, and she is now like a Grim Reaper, and she is still following the girl that she loves around Brighton, but the girl can see her even though she shouldn't see her. It's cute. It's just cute. You and Me on Vacation by Emily Henry, also a book I read for my lesbian read straight romance video. Also going into Mare. My big problem with this book, and I will say it until the cows come home, the main characters consistently refer to each other as brother and sister, and the author is there trying to convince you that there is any sort of romantic feelings there, whilst also telling you they only see each other as siblings constantly. It is gross. It weirded me out so much. Bunny by Mona Awad is going into Meh. I personally really did not enjoy this book, and I would put it in Please God No, but I can see why other people might enjoy it. It's just a lot of magical realism, and I'm really not a magical realism girly. This book is absolutely batshit crazy. It's insane, and I am not the type of girl who understands that kind of literature. Like, I just don't understand it when people are like, this is wild, is my favourite book of all time. I just didn't understand it. But I think if you are into that kind of vibe in a book, you would probably love this. I don't even know where to begin to tell you what this book is about. It's about rabbits and girls who think they're rabbits, and they're also magic, and they turn men into rabbits, or they turn rabbits into men. And the main character, basically at the beginning of the book, is like baffled by the bunnies, like the girls who basically think they're rabbits, or like, it's so weird. And then the main girl gets like taken into like the rabbit cult, and there's never any explanation for it. It's so weird. It's so weird, but I'll tell you what, I think about it all the time, so there's something to be said in that. The Appeal by Janice Hallett. I love this book so much. This is going to go into Gold Star. This is told pretty much all through emails, which is so weird. You've got all these different characters. They're all part of this like amateur theatre group, and a character ends up dying. And so you're trying to figure out through reading all these emails who was responsible for this character's death and like what went on in like the lead up to this. I think is very much going to be a case-by-case basis as to whether people vibe with this style of writing. I love an epistolary novel. Like, I really enjoy books that are told through, like, not normal mediums. Like, anything that's, like, emails or letters or, like, transcripts. I really enjoy that. I find it, like, breaks up, like, the monotony of reading. I find it so fun. And The Appeal, I thought, was so well done. Never Ever Getting Back Together by Sophie Gonzalez. Did I want to read this purely because it was a Taylor Swift reference in the title? Of course. But again, I thought this was just okay. This is another sapphic, I'd like to say YA. Is this YA? YA adult, on the cusp, I'd say. Another sapphic romance featuring two women who are brought onto a reality TV show by their ex-boyfriend with the goal of getting back together with said ex-boyfriend, only he, Jordan, I think his name is just awful, and of course the two women end up falling for each other instead of him, as they should be. I thought the romance in this was really lacking. Again, it was one of those cases where the author tells you that the couple are falling for each other without actually showing it in the words that they are writing. I thought it was cute. I thought the concept was quite fun. It was okay. One by One by Ruth Ware. This is a psychological thriller set in a cabin in the mountains, basically, like, I think it's a ski chalet, and one by one the people there are being murdered, and you need to figure out who the murderer is before it's too late. I thought most of this book was gold star, but then the twist kind of ruined it, because you could see the twist coming from a mile away. By about a third of the way through the book, it was very obvious who was the perpetrator here, because there was only one person it, like, physically could be, which I feel like kind of ruined it a little bit. I don't always hate when you know who the killer is going in. I kind of quite enjoy that in a book, but when you're not supposed to know and you figure it out so early on, it kind of takes away some of the enjoyment, because you're not unravelling it with the characters. You already know what's going to happen, and it's so obvious, and yeah, it was okay. The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood, I think. I'm sure it's Ali Hazelwood. This is going to be, okay, this is very out of character for me, and I know it is, but it's going in gold star. Hear me out. I really enjoyed this. I love the, like, grumpy versus sunshine trope, which is what this really is. I thought the characters were really well rounded out. I really liked both of the characters. I thought their love story was very realistic. I thought the sex scenes in this there were problems with them. I think, but if we're just looking at the romance, I actually really like this book and I think about it all the time and I actually recommend it to people all the time. So yes, very out of character for me, do not judge me. I really liked it, okay? That was another book I read for my lesbian read straight romance video and what can I say? I liked it. Ophelia After All by Raquel Marie, again, is going to go in You'll Do. Again, I want to stress that You'll Do is not bad. These were all good books. I enjoyed all of these. They just don't quite reach that gold star or perfection status. Ophelia is a teenage girl who has always been known as being like boy crazy. Like she is boy mad Ophelia. That is like her number one personality descriptor. And then she starts to realise that maybe she has feelings for girls as well. Maybe she's just an all-round romantic. I thought it was a very, very sweet book. Men Who Hate Women by Laura Bates, I listened to again on Audible. I love listening to non-fiction stuff on Audible. I find it's just like a massive long podcast and I really enjoy that. This is going into Gold Star. This book is terrifying. This book is so scary. It's about incel culture and how so many normal men are finding themselves in this sort of like incel world and they're being brainwashed before anyone realises what happens. Like a man's maybe rejected, or like a teenage boy, a 15-year-old boy is rejected by a girl. He's feeling butthurt. He goes online to find basically support, he just wants to find people who've been through a similar thing, and then he finds himself in incel forums online and it is all downhill from there. This isn't as data heavy as Invisible Women. Like I think I much prefer data driven non-fiction stuff, but Laura Bates literally goes into the midst. She goes into the eye of the tiger. She goes into the incel forums. She literally goes to meetings from all like these Meninist women hate groups. She goes to meetings in London and basically acts as like an undercover spy. It is insane. It is terrifying, and I think everyone needs to listen to it. Men, women alike. Everyone needs to see what is going on right now. Some Girls Do by Jennifer Dugan. I actually read this on holiday last week. I'm going to stick her in You'll Do. Again, another YA sapphic romance novel. Really, really cute. You've got the pageant queen teenager who is just like doing the pageant thing because that's what her mum wants. Then you've got the slightly like rebellious outsider teenager as well who's just trying to fit in, and they just get on really well. Really, really well. They get on. It was cute. A really cute book. Girl A by Abigail Dean. Meh. I wanted to like this book. I know this book won so many prizes. It is literally like you walk into Waterstones and it's like, read this prize-winning book. Like everyone loves it. It's got all these amazing reviews. But it is, you're told it's a mystery thriller, and this is not a mystery thriller. And I think if I went into this book not under that assumption, I probably would have enjoyed it more, but there is no mystery in this book. I wouldn't even really say there's any thrill in this book. It is a really dark, hard read. It follows this girl, Girl A. I can't remember what her real name is. Where is the book? Have I even got it? Where is it? I don't know where the book is. I can't remember the main character's name. But she basically escaped from her family. Her dad was basically this religious fanatic. And I think it's very much inspired by the Turpin family, if you know that story. And all the kids found themselves tied up and basically at the mercy of their father, who lived this really, really strict life. And Girl A is the first one to escape, and she manages to save her entire family. And it basically is following her now as an adult. Her parents both died. She is going back to the home that all this happened in because she is the executor of the will. She has now got all of this to deal with. And it basically, each chapter switches between all the different children and their experiences. It's really hard-hitting. It is not a mystery. You're told within the first chapter what this story is about. And there's a tiny twist at the end, but it's a twist that I saw coming from a mile away. It was very obvious. Andra and Santi Were Here by Johnny Garzavia. Oh my god, this book has found such a special place in my soul. This is 100% perfection. Not only is the cover beautiful, like the story inside this book is as beautiful as the cover art. Andra and Santi are a couple who meet in San Antonio, Texas, and they basically have this beautiful, heartfelt love story. Only it's complicated by the fact that Onda is an artist and he's meant to be moving away to Chicago to go to art school. And Santi is an illegal immigrant. He is not supposed to be in the USA and he is constantly living in fear of being caught, and that adds a lot of strain, a lot of stress to their relationship. And oh, it's so beautiful. Like, these characters are going to be with me for a very, very long time. If you read anything in this video, make it this. Solitaire by Alice Oseman. This one kind of pains me because I love Heartstopper. I love everything else I've read by them. I just did not really enjoy this book, and I think it's because Solitaire is about Tori Spring, who is Charlie, as in Charlie and Nick's older sister, and this was actually written before Heartstopper. So being the Heartstopper stan I am, I'm very much like entrenched in that world, whereas Solitaire was written before and it doesn't entirely match up with some of the stuff that you know about the universe. And you can tell it's written before. Like, Alice Oseman's writing just isn't as like succinct. Her characterization isn't quite right. It's really dark, like weirdly dark. Things happen in this book that aren't really addressed yet in the Heartstopper world, so I'm very intrigued to see if it's ever addressed in the Heartstopper world. I know there's one more book to come out, one more graphic novel to come out of Heartstopper, or maybe two. No, one. The fifth one's the last one, I think. Yeah, I probably wouldn't recommend this. Unwell Woman by Eleanor Cleghorn. This kind of like sits somewhere between You'll Do and Gold Star. I think I'll put it in You'll Do because I don't think I enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed Men Who Hate Women. This is another non-fiction feminist book about the history of women's medicine in a man-made world and how women have always sort of been on the back foot when it comes to medical care, because medical care has historically been administered by men, and men have always kind of refused to believe in female pain, and they've never understood female pain. And it's a really, really thorough look, I think, at women's history, but it's very Western focused, which I think is understandable when the author is from the Western world. Like, it's not possible to write about medical history in every single country ever. Like, that's just not possible. So you write what you know about. But I would have been interested in maybe exploring a little bit more, like maybe Eastern medicine and stuff like that. Maybe there's an entire other book for that, which if you have a recommendation, then please let me know, because that'd be fascinating. But I also feel like because there's so much to talk about, it was kind of hard to like cover everything. And because I'm a massive nerd and I know a lot about medical history, because that is just like one of my areas of interest, there were certain things I was waiting for Eleanor to talk about that she didn't talk about, and I was just sort of like waiting for stuff that never really came. And I don't think that's on the author. That's more on me. Oh my god, Rhubarb. Rhubarb, you're screaming. Come here. This cat has refused to leave me alone all day, haven't you? You've been very annoying today, but you're very cute, so I'll let it off. We're currently working on a theory that she's deaf, so she screams like that. But also we're not sure if she's just a cat. Like, is she just a cat? Or is she deaf? We don't know, do we? Holly, my fiance, has been saying she's deaf for months and I haven't believed her. And the other day I was using my like hand blender to blend soup in the kitchen. And when I tell you, she didn't even flinch. Okay, do you want to get off my keyboard? That's a side note. Come on, Rhubarb. Right, if you want to be with me, you've got to sit nicely. Then another audiobook I listened to is Cultish, The Language of Fanaticism by Amanda Montell. Again, this could very much sit between Gold Star and You'll Do, but I think if we're using Men Who Hate Women as the Gold Star comparison, then once again, it's going to have to go in You'll Do. This is about cults, but not just cults in the typical sense. It talks about Scientology and Soul Cycle and MLMs and how the language used around these kinds of things are very similar to the language used by like cult leaders. It's really interesting. Literally, this book could have been like 10 hours longer and I still would have completely lapped it up. The Twyford Code by Janice Hallett is very sadly a please God no. I had such high hopes for this because we know I love The Appeal. The Appeal is in Gold Star. The Twyford Code is Janice Hallett's second book in this kind of like series. It's not a series, they're not related at all, but like this kind of epistolary style murder mystery series. Rhubarb, get your tail out of my camera. The Twyford Code was just awful. It's told all through audio transcripts, but it basically, the transcriber doesn't quite understand certain words, so a lot of it doesn't really make sense, which like comes into play with the ending of the book. But it was just a really frustrating read. I didn't like any of the characters. I didn't like where the storyline went with it. It was just so odd. When You Call My Name by Tucker Shaw, I had never seen anyone talk about this book, like, ever. And then I was in Gaze the Word in London, which is a queer bookstore, saw it, thought it sounded cute, picked it up, loved it so much. This is literally going to go into perfection, I think. Again, not the best writing in the world, but this story is going to stay with me for a really, really long time. You've got two teenage boys who are sort of discovering themselves, discovering their sexuality, who live in New York in 1990. And obviously by this point, the AIDS crisis has been ongoing for many years. But they're teenagers, they're like just coming into their own, just sort of like starting to go out in the world and explore their sexuality. And so the worry of AIDS is really something they've got to contend with. And these two characters, they don't meet until like quite far into the book. But their paths like are very much intertwined, and it's not a love story between these two main characters necessarily. They've both got their own lives, their own things going on, and it's just a really intense reckoning of like being a teenager in the 1990s in New York with the AIDS crisis. And I can't even imagine how scary it was being a gay man in this time, because there were no answers. Nobody knew really what was going on. And by this point they know how to avoid AIDS, they know a lot of information about it, but it's still scary, and it was really beautiful. The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School by Sonora Reyes is definitely a gold star from me. This is another YA sapphic romance about Yarmulette, and she has basically had to go to the very posh Catholic private school in her town because she needs to look after her brother. Her brother is like crazy smart, but also finds himself getting into trouble a lot. And so when he has to transfer to this school, she also transfers after being outed at her last school. And she is on a mission to basically stay in the closet. Like, she doesn't want to come out, she doesn't want any drama, she just wants to go to school, get her grades, and that's it. Only there's a spanner in the works when she meets somebody who she has feelings for, she basically falls for. And it's a really beautiful story. It's sort of set at the intersection of queerness and culture and being Latina in a very predominantly white space. It's so beautifully written. I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy. At this point, everyone's heard of this book. Everyone knows what this book is about. It is one of the best books of the year. I listened to it again on Audible. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I'm just going to tell you. Perfection. Listen to it, read it, however you would prefer. November 9 by Colleen Hoover. Please, God, no. This book is not romance. This book is abuse. I spent this entire book waiting for the twist that Ben, the like male protagonist in this book, is an abusive asshole. And it never comes. This Colleen Hoover wrote this very clearly abusive man as the pinnacle of romance. And what scares me is you look at all the reviews on Goodreads and everyone's like, oh my god, Ben, he's so wonderful. Like, what a wonderful boyfriend. Like, I was rooting for this couple so much. I loved them. Straight girls, what is wrong with you? What is wrong? That is abuse. That is not romance. Again, you can watch my hated books video for my full rant on that one. Sorry Bro by Talim Vascouni. This is another adult sapphic romance. I really wanted to enjoy this book. I just didn't. I didn't find there to be sort of any chemistry between the two main characters here at all. The only saving grace is it was very much about Armenian culture, and Armenian culture is not something I really knew anything about, so I did feel like I came out of this book knowing about this whole new culture and like having all this new knowledge. But I didn't like the romance, and that was the main part of the book. Mistakes Were Made by Meryl Weisner. This is an age gap romance, not in like a creepy, illegal way. Illegal age gap romance, I should specify. But I'm just not an age gap romance kind of gal, so it's going to go into You'll Do. I know there are a lot of lesbians out there who are really into the whole like MILF thing, like the middle-aged woman kind of thing. Not me, I don't get it, never got it. Give me a football lesbian any day over a milfy lesbian. That's all I'll say. She Is a Haunting by Trang Tan Tran. I really wanted to like this book. I really wanted to like this book, and I just didn't really. I don't know if it's quite meh. Maybe it's You'll Do. But I'm going to put it in meh. But I think this is very much a personal opinion kind of thing, because I'm not into anything supernatural. Magical realism, supernatural, fantasy, sci-fi. I just like books set in the real world, and so anything that's sort of like about that, I'm immediately not going to be as bothered about. I knew going into this book that it was about the supernatural, so at least like I had that in my mind, but I just didn't get the story. I didn't understand it. You've basically got Jade, and she is Vietnamese American, and she spent her entire life feeling like she doesn't really fit in America, but she also doesn't really fit in Vietnam. And she has to go back to Vietnam for a summer to live with her dad because he's promised her tuition money for college if he spends 5 weeks or 6 weeks at his house, helping him basically do it up and make a website, because he's making it into this like B&B in this really like beautiful area of Vietnam. Only when Jade is there, she realises very quickly that the house is haunted. It is also sapphic, which is what I picked up in the first place. Again, the relationship between the two characters feel kind of forced, but also I don't know if you necessarily needed the relationship between these two characters because the supernatural thing was the main element. I don't know, I just didn't get it. I didn't really like it all that much. I did actually quite like the ending, I will say that. But if you are into supernatural stuff, then I would totally recommend this book. It just wasn't for me. Moving on to This Delicious Death by Kayla Cottingham. I was really excited to read this book. I've wanted to read this book for a really long time, and actually I really enjoyed it. Again, I read this on holiday last week. I went away for 4 days. I read 6 books. Like, are you proud of me? I was proud of me. This is going to go into You'll Do. I liked this book. I did, but it's not the best thing I've ever read. It's a world in which something called the Hollowing happened, and the Hollowing... Oh, cat hair everywhere. Rhubarb, you're just leaking everywhere. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so a few years previously there was something called the Hollowing, which was this like disease pandemic kind of situation, and if you caught the Hollowing, you basically turned into like a human zombie cannibal thing, and you got a craving for human flesh. Moving on a few years, there's now something called sin flesh, which scientists have created, which basically satiates the need for human flesh, so instead of eating humans, these hollow people now eat the sin flesh instead, and all is good in the world. The main characters in this go to a music festival, and something happens at the music festival which means they start getting the craving for human flesh again, and lots of bad things are happening. That is about it. This has a quite fun cast of characters. Like, almost all of the 4 main girls are queer in some way. There's a trans character, there's bisexual, there's lesbian. It's like got the whole rainbow, apart from gay men. Is there a gay man in it? No. The whole sapphic rainbow. I thought it was fun. It was fun. Page Boy by Elliot Page, which is his memoir. Talking of trans people, Elliot Page is a trans man, famously a trans man, and this is his memoir, and I was really excited to read this, or listen to it. I listened to it on Audible. Only I feel like it was very surface level. I enjoyed it for what it was, but I was sort of waiting for him to go deeper into what was going on. I feel like it never really explored what it is to be a trans person in Hollywood. It just sort of like spoke about very surface level stuff. There were quite a few situations where Elliot would like start to tell a story, then I was like, okay, yeah, we're really going to get into like the meat of this, and it just wouldn't really go there. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any examples because of course I can't, but I felt like there could have been more. It could have been deeper, but I understand not wanting to share like your innermost thoughts and feelings with the world, but also if you're writing a memoir, then maybe you should be prepared to do that. But I would definitely still recommend it because it's really interesting to get a look at being trans in Hollywood. I am fascinated with queerness in Hollywood. Like, there are so many famous people, there are so few openly LGBT people that I'm obsessed with somebody as soon as they come out as LGBT. Like, there aren't many Hollywood lesbians. There are a few bisexual women. Can't really think of any bisexual men. I'm sure there are some, but I can't think of them. Very few gay men. Where are they all? What are they doing? Are like queer people just not getting famous? Or are there a lot of people hiding in the closet? I don't know, you tell me. Fascinating. Actually, talking of famous queer people, we have Hayley Kiyoko next with Girls Like Girls. I wouldn't really say Hayley Kiyoko's like in Hollywood. When I say Hollywood, I think like actors and actresses, not musicians. I suppose not really relevant, is it? I thought this was really cute. It's not something... Rhubarb, you're like really annoying right now. I'm not gonna lie to you. When I first read it, I was like, oh, it's not particularly great writing, but has it stuck with me? Do I keep thinking about it? Yes, and for that, it is going to go into Gold Star. If you are a millennial lesbian like I am, if you are somebody who was coming to terms with their queerness about 10, 11, 12 years ago, then you'll know Girls Like Girls by Hayley Kiyoko. Like, that music video, that song changed my entire life. I can't even tell you how many times I watched Girls Like Girls by Hayley Kiyoko on YouTube, because there was just nothing like it at the time. Like, there were no openly lesbian celebrities out there. There was nobody telling these stories. And I was obsessed with that music video. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then go and watch it. If you're queer, I have no doubt that you do know what I'm talking about. It's just beautiful. It's just so beautiful. And Girls Like Girls is the story of the characters leading up to what you see in the music video. And I was a bit worried it was going to ruin it for me, but it really didn't. Like, I now have a newfound appreciation for the music video, knowing the story of the characters up to that point. I just really liked it. Okay guys, we're now in the home stretch and we have Spare by Prince Harry. I am unapologetically a Prince Harry stan. I love him. I think he's iconic. As somebody who just doesn't really give a shit about the monarchy, I think everything he's doing is just love it. Love him. Love Meghan Markle. I think his attack on the British media that he sort of shares in this book is incredible. Like, the British media is genuinely awful, and this is what I really fail to understand about a lot of people's criticisms of Prince Harry and of this book, because it's so clear to me they haven't actually listened to it properly or read it properly. Because Harry in this book is very, very, very rarely criticising the royal family. He is criticising the British media, the tabloid media. And if you're actually paying attention, like, it's very obvious that is what his main problem is here. And it is going in Gold Star. I really enjoyed this. Yes, I do hear criticisms where people say it could have done with a lot of editing, but as somebody who is inherently nosy and wants to know everything about everyone all the time, I do not care. This audiobook was so insanely long. Like, it could have been longer and I would have lapped up every single detail. I really enjoyed it. Like, if he wants to release a part 2, I'm there. I will listen to it. I will love it. And then finally, we actually have the most recent book I've read. This is Don't Let Her Stay by Nicola Sanders. Sorry, I just had to look at who wrote this book. This is, again, another Gold Star. A rogue Gold Star. This was literally just on Kindle Unlimited, and I thought, why not? I'll read it. I need a book to download for the plane home. And I devoured this so quickly, but actually, saying that, did I devour it quickly? Because I had to actually, like, keep putting it down because it is so intense. Like, this book is so scary that I actually, like, had my heart going at certain points. Like, I had to, like, literally just leave it and come back to it later, because this book was just so much, and you know it's good writing when you have such, like, a visceral reaction to a book. It was genius. It was so good. And the ending, I feel like, let it down a little bit because it was quite obvious what was going on. With no spoilers, it was so clear that that was going to be the twist at the end of the book. But I don't actually think that really diminished my enjoyment of the book as a whole. Like, I've really enjoyed it. I loved the experience of it. I loved a book being so well written that I literally had to, like, put it down and forget about it for a little bit because it was scaring me too much. So good. So there you go. There are my rankings of all 46 books I've read so far in 2023. I've got 14 more books to read by the end of the year to reach my 60 book challenge. I think I can do it. I'm pretty confident I can do it. I'm actually, like, 2 books ahead of schedule, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. If you have any particularly strong opinions or any opinions whatsoever on anything that I've spoken about in this video, then please leave your comments down below. Get those comments in. This is how we're going to grow this channel, guys, so I can justify spending more time making these book videos. Is that coercion? Maybe. Just saying. Comment, like. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. If you are a queer book lover wanting to hear about queer books, and I'm your gal. I'm here for all your queer book needs. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.